All right, Jabosai, good morning. Good morning. Let us begin by thanking all of our sponsors for this morning's shir. To thank our Talmud Torah sponsors for the month of Elul Haba Aleinu L'Tova, Baruch Meir and Rena Dubin, in honor of our children and all of the suburban sons and daughters beginning of their year of study in Eretz Yisroel. So beautiful. May their Torah study and mitzvos in the Holy Land merit the release of our precious hostages, the success of our soldiers and return to their families, and the arrival of Moshiach, tzidkeuni, bimheira, biyameinu. Amen. Our Daf Yomi sponsor for today, Aron Raskas from Miami, Florida, in celebration of the birth of Shaya Silber, and with special Mazel Tov to his parents, grandparents, and great-grandparents, Kenai Nahara. And Miras Hashem, may this young man grow up to be an incredible Ben Torah, a source of nachas for his entire mishpacha, someone who's Mekadeshim Shemayim Me'eh Ve'esim Shanim Tovos. Well, so with that, let us begin. A thank you to all of our sponsors for their sponsorship. So we have a great daf. It's a good day today. Good day. We have a great daf ahead of us today. Today's daf is Ayin Beis 72. We are picking up on, where did we leave off? Oh, right at the top. Okay, great. So we'll say, so still not used to that, picking up on the actual daf. I'm like, yeah, that's so strange. Okay, so we'll say, so good. So we're picking up a daf Ayin Beis. So let's just to reorient ourselves very quickly. So if you remember again, Abosai, we had a Mishnah. And once again, the Mishnah was discussing. First of all, I want to give a very special welcome back to Dr. Elman, who Baruch Hashem is rejoining our shir. Baruch Hashem, a great zichus chevra. And he asked me yesterday that to be pressured by the members of the chevra to stay and to not try out other things. So just feel free to text him, harass him, whatever, gaslight him, whatever you need to do in order to keep him engaged. All right. So with that, let's again. So remember again in the Mishnah we had a whole bunch. We're continuing the same theme, which is when you go ahead and you purchase something, what's included, what's excluded. So yesterday we spoke about the sadeh. So specifically, we're focusing now that if you're makdish a field. If a person goes in and consecrates a field, so now again, what is included, what's not included? So interestingly enough, this comes down to a fundamental machlokes. What's the machlokes? The machlokes is, it's a twofold machlokes. Number one, is hektish considered to be like a matana or a mecher? That's number one, which is a general yisodistic idea. When you're makdish something, is it like a sale or is it like a gift? Now, both sides, based on what we saw yesterday, why is that important? It's very important. Why? Because remember, when we come to a sale, we come to a tremendous machlokes. What's the machlokes? Rabbi Akiva and the Chacham, excellent. Mocher ba'ayin yofe or mocher ba'ayin ra. At the end of the day, when you sell something, is a sale done with incredible generosity, or is it done with, again, I'm always hesitant, I don't want to call it a stinginess, but is it, what's the good, I'm sorry? Minimal requirement. It's done with minimal requirements, good, right? So that's the chance. Rabbi Akiva says, mocher ba'ayin yafet, complete generosity, and the Chum say, no, mocher ba'ayin ra, minimal requirement to satisfy the criteria of the sale. So we'll say, so now, when it comes, but yet, interestingly enough, everyone agrees that when you give a matana, what's the halacha? When you give a matana, ayin yafa. Ayin yafa, always incredible generosity. So now I come to hektish, a makdish something. So the shaila now is hektish a mecher or is it a matana? So if it's a matana, everyone is going to agree that it's ba'ayin yafa. And if it's a mecher, then once again it's subject to machlokes. So here's what happened, very quickly. So remember again, we had the Mishnah. In the Mishnah, Rabbi Shimon said that when you go in your makdish field, essentially, all the other things that are generally excluded in the sale of the field are excluded by hekdish also. The only thing that are included are the charuv and the shikma, right? The grafted carob and the prune sycamore tree. Why? And Rabbi Shimon's logic was because they're yonik, because they go ahead and they derive nutrients from the ground. They derive nutrients from the ground. So that was the position of Rabbi Shimon. Okay? So we'll say, so now what the Gemara wanted to suggest yesterday was Rabbi Shimon, in all of this, we also saw Rav Huna. And what did Rav Huna say? Rav Huna said that halacha l'maisa, if you go ahead and you acquire 2 trees, as much as normally the acquisition of trees does not come with land, at least 2 trees, halacha l'maisa, again, you go ahead and you acquire land together with your trees. Okay, so what was it? So now the Gemara wanted to suggest that, okay, because the Gemara wanted to suggest that halacha l'maisa, Rav Shimon holds it Rabbi Akiva, and Rav Huna holds like the Rabbanon. Good. So says the Gemara. Umi matzis mukmas la Rabbi Shimon, Rabbi Akiva. There's Rabbi Shimon. Now again, I will say that's Rabbi Shimon in our Mishnah, right? So just understand what's happening over here. Rabbi Shimon in our Mishnah says that that hekdish is like mecher, is like a sale. Mocher ba'ayin yafe, like Rabbi Akiva, and therefore when I'm makdish my field, I'm makdish everything. Now, what does everything mean? Everything means even the ground upon which the charuv and the shikma are situated. Right? And therefore, again, the charuv and the shikma derive their nutrients from consecrated land, and anything that derives its nutrition from consecrated land is consecrated. And therefore, Allah Lamaisa, again, the charuv and the shikma are consecrated as well. Whoa, hold up. Can you really establish the position of Rabbi Shimon like Rabbi Akiva? Tanya, we learned hikdish shloshi lanos mimata asar la base sa'a. So it's an interesting case. If you're makdish 3 trees in a field where you have 10 trees situated in a base sa'a. Now, we'll say, now we've seen this before. This formula of 10 trees in a base sa'a represents the number of trees in the number of land in the amount of land necessary to support them, right? So 10 trees in base saw gives each tree enough for what it needs. Ultimately, again, that's going to be, he goes ahead and he says that's 250 amas of space for each particular tree. Each particular tree. And Rashi points out that's the amount of space that a tree needs in order to thrive. So hektish shloshi lanosumata asar lebesa. So if you're makdish 3 trees in a field that has 10 trees growing in a base saw, so what's the halacha? Hari hektish esakarka ve'eshei lano shevimeim. So in this kind of case, ultimately again, you're makdish the trees. You makdish the karka. Ultimately, again, you makdish the land upon which the trees are situated, and the smaller trees in between them. Right. So, in other words, so if you can imagine, in this case over here, you're being makdish an area of 3 trees. So, therefore, when 3 trees, remember again, I will say 3 trees are significant. That has the status of a sod of a field in and of itself. So, as long as those trees themselves are situated in a field in which they can normally grow and thrive, so now you're makdish the trees, the land, and anything in between those trees as well. Lefichach, therefore, kishu poda, if you were to redeem these trees from hekdish, poda base zera chomer sorim b'chamishim shekel kesef. So I'll say this is very interesting. So now, watch this. If you were to redeem this from the Beis HaMikdash, so we'll say, so we're going to see there are essentially 2 ways in which you could redeem something. Well, let's talk about how you're redeeming this, then we'll work backwards. When you redeem it, you don't redeem the trees separately and the earth separately and the ground separately. Rather, you essentially redeem the ground, you redeem the karka, and by redeeming the karka, you also redeem the trees. Now, how are you redeeming karka? So redemption of karka from the Beis HaMikdash could take 2 different forms, and it depends on the type of land you are redeeming. If you're redeeming just regular land, so you redeem it at whatever the market value is. If you're redeeming what we call ste'achuza, ste'achuza is ancestral land, right? Land that is part of your tribal allocation. Right? Then halacha l'maisa, there is a formula for redeeming that type of land. What's that formula for redeeming that type of land? So that's lashon over here. Beis zera chomer sorim b'chabishim shekel kesef. Essentially, every base core which produces a zera of a zera chomer of sorim, that's an amount of barley. So for every unit of land that produces a zera chomer of barley, which is essentially a base core, you redeem it for 50 silver pieces, 50 shekel. So 50 shekel per base core, that is the redemption amount for a ste'achuza. Take a look at the Rashbam for just a moment. Kishu Poda. The Rashbam says over here, Eno tzarach liftos ha'ilanos b'shavyehen v'hakarka kefi chashbon hakasa b'parsha b'mistei achuza. So yaktish ish ala Hashem v'ya ekcha lefi zaro zera chomer sorim b'chamishim shekel kesef ela hakol poda b'yachad lefi cheshbon beis zera chomer sorim b'nun shekel kesef da'inu lebeis kar selo pundion l'shana shezeh cheshbon nun shekel. So the idea over here is so just look what's happened over here. Essentially, if you're makdish 3 trees, right, and those trees were sitting in a sa'ah of land, right? I should say those trees were part of a group of 10 that are sitting in a sa'ah of land. So 10 trees in a sa'ah of land is enough land to go ahead and sustain them, which means that those trees are going to remain, the intention is for them to remain there permanently. You're makdish 3 of those trees. 3 trees have a chashivos by themselves as a field, by themselves. So essentially, you are makdish the field. So first of all, when you're makdish it, you're makdish the trees, right? The earth, the land, the karka upon which the trees are situated, and any smaller trees that may be between those 3 larger trees. Beautiful. Now you want to be podeh. You want to go ahead and redeem it. When you redeem it, Rabbosai, you don't have to redeem trees separately and land separately. Rather, we look at this as one entity called karka, and therefore you redeem karka. How do you redeem karka? So once again, it depends on what you're redeeming. If you're redeeming regular land, you'll redeem it at market value. If you're redeeming steachuza, there is this particular formula of 50 shekel per base core. 50 shekel per base core. That's your formula. Okay. So the Gemara says, fine. Pachos mikan, or yes or mikan. Right? But I will say, if it's more than this, or I should say less than this, or more than this, o yosakan, o shegdishan bezeh achar, or for that matter, you didn't go ahead and necessarily redeem the trees, be makdish the trees together. Rather, ultimately, again, you are makdish them one after the other. So we'll say in that case, all you've been makdish is the trees, and not the land, nor were you makdish the area in between the trees. Okay. Lefichach, therefore, kishuhu podes haylonos b'shavyehen. Therefore, if you were to redeem this, you would redeem the trees at their actual value. So we'll say, so again, so just don't get worried about there's a lot of details over here, but just remain focused. The idea over here is, if I'm makdish the trees as a unit, and remember, we're talking about trees that are planted properly in a way that could sustain them. The issue is, we'll say people, let me give you one more piece of information. People planted trees essentially in 2 different ways. You could pack densely, you could plant trees in a dense fashion. In which case, what was your goal? Your goal was to grow it and cut it. Because that amount of density couldn't necessarily sustain the trees on an ongoing basis, especially to produce fruit. So sometimes if you just wanted to plant trees, you wanted for lumber, you wanted something else, you could plant it densely, let it grow, cut it down. If you wanted to plant trees in a way in which it was a sustainable growth, it was going to be there for a while, that's where you come into these 10 trees at a base sa'ah. That represents the amount of trees planted in the amount of land that can normally sustain them. So therefore now we're talking about a field in which the trees are meant to stay. Okay? I'm makdish 3 of those trees. 3 is significant because 3 represents a field by itself. So halacha number 1 is if you're makdish 3 trees, the good, right? You're makdish everything. That's the trees, the land, everything in between the trees. Beautiful. Therefore, when you redeem those trees, right, or you redeem that area, it's considered to be karka. All of it is one unit, and therefore it's redeemed as a unit of land. How do you redeem land? Well, again, if it's steachuza land, then ultimately again that's going to be 50 shekel kesef per base core. That's Stechu's ancestral land has a fixed redemption amount. Okay, so that's halacha number 1. Halacha number 2, however, is we'll say, let's say again the trees were planted in a small area, or for that matter, again, when you weren't makdish 3 trees simultaneously, rather you were makdish one after the other. So in this case, I will say the trees and the land are reckoned separately. The hektish still works. But therefore, if you were to go ahead and redeem it from hektish, how would it work? You'd have to redeem trees separately and land separately, however the valuations would be established. Okay, furthermore, again, the Gemara says, V'lo od. Not only that, second. I just want to come back to one thing over here. Okay. Not as an important Rashban that we'll come back to in just a moment. Not only that, but let's say again, also you were makdish the ilanos, you were makdish the trees, and then you came back and you were makdish the karka. Kishu podes haylanos b'shavyehen, right? Kishu poda, if you want to then go ahead and redeem things, podes haylanos b'shavyehen. You go ahead and you redeem the trees for their actual value. V'chozer upoda base zera chomer siorim b'chamishim shekel kesef. And then you'll go ahead and you'll redeem the land, again, I will say for its fixed value of, again, 50 shekel kesef per base core. per base car. Okay, so they're going to say all that's saying is if halacha l'maisa again, you redeem them, you makdish the trees one after the other, or for that matter again, you're being makdish trees that are situated in a what we'll call in a smaller than acceptable geographic area, then the trees and the field are reckoned separately. And again, the hektish still works, just to be clear. But if you want to go ahead and redeem it, you're going to have to redeem it at two stages. You redeem trees by themselves and land by itself. So the Gemara says, whose opinion is this? They both say, now here's what's interesting. So what's coming out over here is the fact that you go ahead and you redeem trees and land separately. What does that tell you? That tells you that trees, for hektish purposes, trees don't come with land. Trees don't come with land. That's what's out of that whole complicated piece. That's the takeaway. Trees don't come with land. By the way, whose opinion is that? Money. Rabbi Akiva ha'amar mocher ba'ayin yofeh v'chol shekin makdish. So once I came to Rabbi Akiva, because let's plug this in now, right? What does Rabbi Akiva hold? Rabbi Akiva holds mocher ba'ayin yofeh. Mocher ba'ayin yofeh. When you sell something, you sell with complete generosity. I both say. Now, what does Rabbi Akiva hold about hektish? Is hektish mecher or is hektish matana? What does Rabbi Akiva hold? The truth is, to be honest, it doesn't even matter. Right? Why doesn't it matter? Because remember again, by matana, everyone holds that's what? Ayin yofeh. So if you're Rabbi Akiva, whether hektish is a mecher or a matana, it doesn't matter because it matters for other logistics. But for our purposes now, it really doesn't matter because if Rabbi Akiva is holding mocher ba'ayin yafeh, that when you sell with generosity, then all the more so when you're makdish, of course you're makdish ba'ayin yafeh. So if it's Rabbi Akiva, that's not going to work. Why? So Rabbi Akiva ha'amar mocher ba'ayin yafeh, ba'ayin yafeh mocher v'chol shekein makdish. The Choshekein Makdish. So I say at the end of the day, take a look at the Rashbam for just a moment. Rabbi Akiva, Homer Ba'ayin Yafa Mocher. It's right across from Tosas Umishayer. So Usvirale the Mocher Shnei Ilanos Yesh Lakarka the Lokeach the Leslie Mathnisin Da Mocher Esasina Da Lokeach Shnei Ilanos Besocha in Lokarka. So I'll say so if it's Rabbi Akiva, okay. So if it's Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Choshken, Rabbi Akiva, Makdish Beis Ilanos, O Gimel B'Zachar Zeh, T'yesh Lo Mihal Hektish Makom HaIlanos. So we'll say, if it's Rabbi Akiva, then halacha l'maisa, if you're makdish one tree, two tree, three trees, who cares? At the end of the day, when you're makdish the tree, Rabbi Akiva holds hektish is ba'ayin yafeh. If hektish is ba'ayin yafeh, then what's coming along with the consecrated tree? What's coming along with it? The land. And if that's the case, Rabbi will say, if that's the case, remember again, Rabbi will say, so if that's the case, then according to Rabbi Akiva, if when you're makdish the tree always comes with land, then if you're going to redeem the tree, there's no such thing as redemption of the tree by itself. Every tree redemption is always going to come with what? Or is always going to be connected to redemption of land. And by the way, once you're in redemption of land, what's the nice part about redemption of land? At least if it's te'achuz, ancestral land, there's a fixed formula. There's that fixed formula of ultimately 50 shekel kasef for every base core. Okay, fine. So therefore, again, Keb Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva ha'amar mocher ba'ayin yofeh mocher v'chosh kemakdish. Rabbanon, sefetz Rabbanon ha'amri mocher hu de ba'ayin mocher ava makdish ba'ayin yofeh makdish. So also it's very interesting. And if it's the Rabbanon, watch this. Even the Rabbanon who hold that mocher ba'ayin ra'a mocher, they both say the Rabbanon hold that hekdish has the status of matana, right? And matana, ultimately, everyone agrees is what? Ba'ayin yafeh. So this is fascinating. So we'll say, so whose opinion is this? So remember, again, we're trying to figure out who is the author of this opinion that says that if you're makdish trees individually, or only two of them, that essentially Beis Hamikdash gets trees, but doesn't really get land. Who is that opinion? So it can't be Rabbi Akiva, and it can't be the Rabbanon. Ela Pshita Rabbi Shimon. Rather, I will say it must be Rabbi Shimon. Now, I will say, remember again, here, it's just to understand the collision course we're headed on. It's actually incredible. I mean, wrong verbiage. You understand? So the collision course we had on will say is we just said before Rabbi Shimon holds like Rabbi Akiva. So now the Gemara is challenging that. So now we're saying it must be Rabbi Shimon. In other words, if it's not the Rabbanon and it's not the Rabbi Akiva, it's not the Rabbanon. It's got to be Rabbi Shimon. For Rabbi Shimon aliba deman. Now I will say now Rabbi Shimon has to be aligning himself with another opinion. So who is Rabbi Shimon aligning himself with? Rabbi Akiva ha'amar mocher ba'ayin yafa mocher b'choshkin makdish. So if it's Rabbi Akiva, if Rabbi Shimon is aligning himself with Rabbi Akiva, we just got finished saying Rabbi Akiva holds will say Rabbi Akiva is ayin yafa all the way through, right? He's ayin yafa by bimheira, he's ayin yafa by hektish. So again, if it's Rabbi Akiva is ayin yafa. Ela pshita liba d'Rabbanon. Rather, Rabbi say must be that Rabbi Shimon is aligning himself with Rabbanon. Okay, but here's the problem, which is what? Even the Rabbanon hold that by makdish is ba'ayin ra. Sorry, ba'ayin yafa. So what's going on over here? Ela pshita aliba d'Rabbanon because of Rabbi Shimon. Ki heichi democher ba'ayin ra'a mocher makdish nami ba'ayin ra'a makdish. So I will say so. Apparently, Rabbi Shimon has a different understanding of the Rabbanon. So I will say so again, and it can actually work out very well. In other words, in Rabbi Shimon's view of the Rabbanon, he holds like this. Let's go with what we know. What do the Rabbanon hold? What's their shita? Mocher ba'ayin ra'a. That's their shita. Rabbi Shimon must hold that according to the Rabbanon, hektish has the status of a bimheira, has the status of a sale, right? And therefore again, and the Rabbanon maintain their same position, that the same way mocher ba'ayin ra, so too, makdish ba'ayin ra. Okay? And therefore I will say, if you have a case of makdish ba'ayin ra, you could have a case of someone who is makdish, his trees, and what? Without the karka. Without the karka, you could have that. I'm giving the base of mikdash the trees. I'm not giving the base of mikdash the karka. So makdish ba'ayin ra makdish umeshayir ara, and therefore again, as much as I'm makdish the trees. Now, both say now again. Remember, all of this is going to depend how you're being makdish the trees. Because also remember again, we do have the case. What's the case where everyone agrees the karka comes with the trees? What's the case? Right? Three trees. Now remember again, you need two criteria. Number one, what you need is a solid arbitorial field. I like that word. Right? You need a solid arbitorial setup, which is 10 trees situated in a sa'ah of land. What that tells you is, this is a field that's here to stay. Great. Fantastic. That's number one. Then, if you're makdish 3 of those trees, and obviously we'll say, we're talking about 3 trees in proximity to each other. Not like a tree over here, a tree over there, a tree somewhere else, right? 3 trees in proximity to each other, good. 3 trees in a field like that is considered to be essentially a field within a field. Okay, so everyone agrees, in that case, you're makdish those trees, that comes with 3 things. We'll say, what do you get in that package? What do you get in that hektish package? Number one, the 3 trees. Number 2, right? And let's go with the order. All the smaller trees in between those 3 trees, and number 3, the karka. The shayla is, if you're makdish something smaller than that, what are you getting? And obviously there is this opinion that holds, there's this brisa that holds that you're only, let's say you're makdish 1 tree, 2 trees, right? Or for that matter, 3 trees, but they are not planted in an area of a sa'ah, you're going to get less. You'll get the trees, not the land. So who is that? So now the Gemara is suggesting that's Rabbi Shimon, in accordance with the position of the Rabbanon. And the understanding the position of the Rabbanon is same way we say mocher ba'ayin ra'ah, so to makdish ba'ayin ra'ah. Incredible. Ve'ela, we'll say on the base. Oh, that was long. This is longer than it looked last night. Okay. Ve'ela, kashya. How will be yokin mistay hektish? We're going to finish the parak today. So we'll say, but what about the fact that it says that ultimately, again, they derive their unika? In other words, we'll say, here's the problem. Rabbi Shimon is the one who said that halacha l'maisa. Remember again, Rabbi Shimon in the Mishnah said that when you're makdish the field, even the carob and the sycamore tree are included, or only the carob and the sycamore tree included. Why? Because they derive their nourishment from the field. So what do you do? What do you do ultimately again? What do you do with this situation? Because at the end of the day, since halacha l'maisa, the owner is retaining the field for himself, therefore halacha l'maisa, the yenika, the sustenance is not coming from hektish. So rather, you have to say that Rabbi Shimon is espousing a different opinion, but rather he's trying to speak to the position of the Rabbanon. What is he saying? Lididi ki hechi de mocher ba'ayin ra mocher makdish ba'ayin ra makdish. So what says in this? Rabbi Shimon says the truth is, Rabbi Shimon is now espousing his own opinion. And Rabbi Shimon is saying as follows. I really hold like this. Rabbanon, I agree with you. That mocher ba'ayin ra'a mocher. I agree with that. And I say that hekdish is like a sale. I will say hekdish is not a matana. Hekdish is a mechira. And therefore, the same way that mocher ba'ayin ra'a mocher, so too makdish ba'ayin ra'a makdish. That's my position, Rabbi Shimon says. However, v'shir m'shayir, and therefore again, if you give trees to the Beis Hamikdash, you may be giving trees, but you could be withholding land for yourself. Okay, but Rabbi Shimon says that's my opinion. Rabbanon, now the Rabbanon we know don't hold that way, right? What do the Rabbanon hold? The Rabbanon hold that ultimately mocher ba'ayin ra mocher, that they do hold, but they hold makdish ba'ayin yafem makdish. So Rabbi Shimon says ledidachu. According to you, Rabbanon, odu limiha delo hikdish ela charov hamorkav usdan hashikma. So we'll say now watch this. Okay, here we go. We'll say so. Rabbi Shimon wants to say like this. Okay, Rabbi Shimon wants to say like this. I hold personally that when you go ahead and you're makdish a field, let's go back. Let's leave aside trees for just a moment. When you're makdish a field, Rabbi Shimon says that halacha l'maisa makdish ba'ayin ra makdish, and therefore when you're makdish a field, what do you makdish? What do you makdish? A field. What are you not makdish? All the same things that are excluded in the sale of a field are also excluded in the hektish of a field. What's excluded in the sale of a field? That's our Mishnah. The bar, the gat, the shovach, the charov, the shikma. So Rabbi Shimon has a very smooth worldview. His worldview is mocher ba'ayin mocher. Hektish is just like a mechira, and therefore everything is excluded from the hektish. What does the Beis Hamikdash get? What does the Beis Hamikdash get? What does it get? It gets a field. And that's it. Rabbi Shimon says, but at least you Rabbanon, at least agree with me that halacha l'maisa, that the only thing that the Beis Hamikdash will get according to you Rabbanon is the carob tree and the sycamore. Why? Because Rabbi Shimon will say, as much as those things are normally excluded from a sale, and therefore should be excluded from hektish, they're going to be included in hektish. Why? Because they are yoneg. They're receiving their nutrients from a field that is consecrated. So because they're receiving nutrients from a consecrated field, therefore they become consecrated themselves. So at least, in other words, Rabbi Shimon says, I hold that everything should be excluded. But Rabbanon, you at least hold that only the carob and the sycamore tree should be included, but nothing else. But the Rabbanon say no, lo shna. The Rabbanon hold no. The Rabbanon hold that halacha l'maisa. The Rabbanon say no. We disagree with you fundamentally. Why do we disagree fundamentally? Because Rabbanon will say, we hold that hektish is a matana. It's not a mecher. It's not a sale. And because it's a matana, therefore what? It goes ba'ayin yafa. And because it goes ba'ayin yafa, everything is included. Wow. So Rabbi say, this is very exciting. So now, Rabbi say, it turns out that we really have three opinions going on over here, right? We've got Rabbi Akiva of mocher ba'ayin yafa. So Rabbi Akiva, we know he holds by hektish, that obviously, again, if it's mocher ba'ayin yafa, it's only makdish ba'ayin yafa. We've got the Rabbanon. The Rabbanon hold mocher ba'ayin ra. Right, but by hektish they hold ayin yafa. But why do they hold hektish as ayin yafa? Why? Because they hold that hektish is like a matana, not like a mecher, and therefore hektish ba'ayin yafa. And then you've got Rabbi Shimon, and Rabbi Shimon holds mocher ba'ayin ra, and Rabbi Shimon holds that that hektish is like mechira, and even though it's like mechira, he holds that makdish is ba'ayin ra as well. Wow. So I'll say this is a raging machlokes. Incredible. Now, the good part is that we'll say, let's always focus, right? We have to focus on bringing Klal Yisrael together, to focus on Achos, so figure out what do we agree on. So what do we agree on? What's the one thing everyone agrees on? Matana. Right? So matana, everyone will agree, is ba'ayin yafa. Okay, so this is our three machlokes. So now let's analyze. Ma'u came to like Rabbi Shimon. So I'll say, so now you're establishing this like Rabbi Shimon. And the shittas Rabbi Shimon is mocher ba'ayin ra and makdish ba'ayin ra as well. Se'ema sefer, look at the sefer. V'lo'od ela afilu hektish es ha'ilonos v'chazve v'hektish es ha'karka. So we'll say, what was the second part of the brayso that we quoted on Amud Aleph? The second part of the brayso was that if you're makdish the ilonos, you makdish the trees, and then you go out and you come back and you makdish the karka. So now we'll say, this is where I consecrated things at two stages. Kishu poda sailanos, if you want to redeem it, so you redeem the trees, b'shavyehem. I will say, how do you redeem trees from hekdesh? How do you redeem trees? Whatever market value is. Whatever market value. V'chozer upoda beis zera chomer seorim b'chamishim shekel kesef. And I will say, when you redeem the land, again, assuming we're dealing with ancestral, and this is all assuming we're dealing with steachuza, you have the formula of 50 shekel kesef per base saw. Fine. So I will say, now listen to this. V'i Rabbi Shimon. Now, if you're telling me this is the view of Rabbi Shimon, and Rabbi Shimon holds makdish ba'ayin ra, lezel basar pidyon, v'nifraku agav arayu. Now, if it's Rabbi Shimon, I'll say, okay, so now, get ready for this. New concept, right? So now, if it's Rabbi Shimon is of the opinion, I will say that when you redeem something from hekdesh, this is fascinating. I will say, we're going to see there are two ways that you can look at redemption, right? I was makdish something, and now I'm going to redeem it. There are two ways in which you could look at redemption, right? Possibility one is the manner of redemption is fundamentally determined by how the item was consecrated, right? And therefore, if the item was consecrated in stages, therefore what? Redemption takes place in stages as well. The other possibility is no. We don't care how the item became consecrated. When you redeem something, you look at what it is now. So I will say, where does this come up? This is fascinating. Where does this come up? In this case, watch this. Let's say I was makdish trees and then I was makdish karka. Two stages. So I will say we're going to, the first approach will say, okay, you consecrated in stages and therefore what? Redemption takes place in stages. Second opinion says no. What you look at now, we'll say, what's the status of the trees and the karka right now? What's the status? Hekdesh. So therefore again, it's all hekdesh, and it's all the same hekdesh. So therefore, again, when it comes to redemption, you could redeem it as one comprehensive unit. So the Gemara says, Rabbi Shimon is of the opinion that we call that second approach of just kind of redeeming. If it's all hekdesh, then it could be redeemed as one unit. We look at what it is now, not at how it became hekdesh. We call that azul basar pidyon. That go after the redemption period. In other words, look at what it is now. And the mechanism of redemption is determined by what it is now, not by how it became consecrated. It's incredible. So the Gemara says, Desanyo, listen to this. This is great. We'll say, watch this. Reuven bought a field from his father. Now we'll say, now it's important to understand over here that what kind of field did Reuven buy from his father? It was field, and steachuza field. So it was family property. Reuven bought a field from his father Yaakov. Okay, what happened? No, I'm sorry. Reuven. So step one, Reuven bought the field from his father Yaakov. Step two, Reuven was makdish that field. Okay, no problem. Then Yaakov died. So what's the halacha? So now here's the interesting part. So now Reuven wants to redeem that field. So the Shaya Silber is, what is the status of that field? Now remember again, when Reuven was makdish it, it was a regular bought field. Now his father died. Now that his father died, essentially what happened? That field, so to speak, becomes like a steachuza. Now what's the difference between ancestral family-held property versus regularly purchased property? What's the difference? The mechanism for redemption. Right? Regularly purchased property is redeemed at regular market value. Steachuza, ancestral property, is redeemed at the fixed amount, right? A 50 shekel kesef per base saw. So now watch this case. In this case, this is fascinating. Reuven bought a piece of land, ancestral land, from his father Yaakov. Then Reuven was makdish it. Now Yaakov died, and now Reuven wants to redeem the field from the Beis HaMikdash. So what's the shayla? What valuation does he use? This is great. So the Gemara says, Minayin shetahei lefanav kisteachuza. How do you know that when Reuven redeems it, he redeems it as a steachuza? He redeems it as ancestral land. Tamalomar vim es stei miknaso asher lo misteachuza so. Because the pasuk says, if he consecrated, and he wants to redeem a bought field that was not misteachuza so. So what does this mean? Soda she'in ru'uya lios de'achuza. What kind of field is redeemed for regular market value? A field that is not roi, that is not fit or not destined to become steachuza. Yatsa sazu sheruya lios teachuza. Did Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Shimon. Right? Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Shimon hold that Allah Chalamaisa, any field that is destined to become a steachuza is treated like a steachuza. So we'll say the chiddush over here is what? What's the chiddush over here? Even though when Reuven was makdish it, right? When Reuven consecrated it, how did he consecrate it as? What was its status? What was its status? A regular purchased field. Yet, at the time of redemption, it's steachuza. So how does Reuven redeem it? At the valuation of a steachuza. So what do you see from here? You see when it comes to redemption, we look at shas pidyon. We look at the status of the item at the time of when you want to redeem it, and not at how it was initially consecrated. Rabbi says, "Minayim." Rabbi has a different case. Minayim lulokech. First white line. Minayim lulokech sadame aviv umeis aviv the achar kach hekdish. So we'll say this into this case. Rabbi has a little bit of a different case. Same concept, kind of. But how do I know? Right? Reuven bought a field from his father. Again, steachuza. He bought a field from his father. An ancestral family held land. Right, he bought a field from his father. Then Father Yaakov died. The Achar Hekdish. Now, say now in this case, Reuven bought the field from his father. His father died. So now, obviously, again after his father died, that becomes Reuven's steachuza. Now Reuven goes ahead and is makdish it. Minay shetei lefanav ki steachuza. How do I know that when Reuven redeems it, it's redeemed as a steachuza? Talmud Lomar, because the pasuk says vim estei miknaso asher lo misteachuza so. So let's say the pasuk says, the pasuk talking about when it says that you redeem at market price, that's talking about a field, a bought field, and not a steachuza field. Gemara says, Sadeh she'ena steachuza. This refers to a field that's not a steachuza. Yotza sazu she steachuza. Comes to exclude this case where ultimately, again, Reuven was makdish steachuza. And I will say, you may say to yourself, that's obvious, right? Reuven bought the field from his father died, and now Reuven's makdish the field. So now we're saying Reuven redeems that field as a steachuza. Of course. So we'll say, what's the knage in it? Like, what's the interesting piece in it? Remember, how did Reuven initially gain possession of that field? How did he gain possession of the field? Through a purchase. So I might have thought that since he gained possession of the field initially as a purchase, therefore it's a purchased field, and therefore when redeeming it from Hekdish, it should be a market value. Kamash Malon, essentially anything that has any connection to being a steachuza is treated like a steachuza. Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Shimon. So I'll say, Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Shimon, I will say, we skip that next phrase. The phrase that goes, Heicha demeis aviv ve'achar kach hekdisha lo tzricha kra ki tzricha. I'm not just skipping it because I want to finish the daf. I'm skipping it actually, it's actually removed. The Bach removes that entire phrase. He says, Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Shimon, Heicha di kedisha ve'achar kach meis aviv minalhu. How do you know about the case? According to Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Shimon, how do you know about the case? Essentially, Rabbi Meir's case, of where Reuven bought the land, was makdish it, and then his father died. Right? I should say differently. He was makdish, v'hecha dehegdisha v'achar kach meis aviv. He was makdish, and then his father died. Minalo. Where do they know that case from? Ime haikra. So if it's from the same pasuk, im lechad Rabbi Meir, who does say the pasuk comes for the position of Rabbi Meir that he just espoused. Ella lav mishum da azli basar pidyon. Rather, Rabbi say it must be that the position of Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Shimon is when redeeming consecrated property. How do we determine the mechanism of consecration? We look at what it is now. In other words, we do not look at how the property became consecrated as a determinant for the manner of redemption. Rather, we look at what it is now. Now, I will say, this is mind-blowing. Why is this mind-blowing? What did the Brisa say? Going back to the Brisa said if you redeem one tree or you redeem two trees, so then what happens? The tree, if you're makdish one tree or two trees, so what ends up happening? Essentially, the trees become consecrated on their own, and the karka become consecrated on their own. Therefore, what did the Brisa say? If you want to redeem it, you have to redeem the trees separately, and then the karka separately. But why? And now we wanted to say that it goes according to Rabbi Shimon. Here's the problem. Rabbi Shimon says that when it comes to redemption goes basar pidyon. Redemption is determined at the time of the actual redemption. We look at the item as it is now, not as we don't look at it through the lens of how it became consecrated. So in other words, when we see this now, Reuven wants to redeem this now, what do we see in front of us? We see karka. It's karka that has trees on it. Therefore, how do you redeem it? You redeem it as karka. And if it's steachuza land, what that means is we redeem it at the fixed valuation per, whatever, the 50 shekel kesef per base of land. So how do you reconcile this position of Rabbi Shimon with the Brisa? In reality, normally, So Rabbi Yisrael says, the truth is, Rabbi Shimon, they don't go Basra Pidyon. No, they do not determine redemption based on what is in front of us now. Rather, again, they actually hold that the mechanism for redemption is fundamentally tethered to the manner in which the items became consecrated. V'hacha kra ashkechu b'darash. Here Rabbi said they have a pasuk that they're darshaning. Im kain lichtov kra v'im es stei miknaso asher lo achuzaso. The pasuk could have just said, if you're makdish a bought field that is not your stei achuzah. Inami stei achuzaso. My asher lo mistei achuzaso. Why does the pasuk seem to use a prolonged form, right? And if you have a bought field, asher lo mistei achuzaso, that is not a field from your ancestral holdings. Why say it like that? Just say, if you have a field that was purchased with money, that's not a stei achuzah. Just say it straight. Why the prolonged form? So the Gemara says, I'm sorry. Ma asher lo mistei achuzaso, es she'ina ru'uya lios stei achuzah. Because we'll say it's coming to teach you that halacha l'maisa, it's talking about a field that is not fit to be a stei achuzah. In other words, we'll say this is fascinating. Any field that has the ability to become a stei achuzah is redeemed as a stei achuzah, even if it wasn't consecrated as a stei achuzah. Now we'll say, so if you ever have a case like that, that's our case that we just saw, right? Reuven buys a field from his father. Father Yaakov is selling off family hold property. He's selling it to his kid. Okay, nothing wrong with that. So he's selling a field to Reuven. So Reuven now bought a field. This is a purchased field. Now again, whichever case you want to do, Reuven is makdish it, and then his father dies, or his father dies, and then he's makdish it. It doesn't matter. The point over here is he's makdish a field that he bought with his money. Yet what is the pasuk saying? Because at some point in time, this field is going to morph into becoming a stei achuzah. Therefore, what? It is treated as a stei achuzah. And therefore, again, the redemption is done at the fixed price stei achuzah model. Absolutely incredible. All right, we'll say, let's finish this up. Aron Raskas. So Rav Huna says, we'll say, by the way, just before we finish the parak, just to close out the halacha l'maisa. So we'll say, so all of this, right? What's the halacha l'maisa we emerged? So first of all, we'll say, we already saw that we pass like Rabbi Akiva, the mocher ba'ayin yafeh mocher. That's how we paskin. That halacha l'maisa, again, if you go ahead, if you sell something b'mocher ba'ayin yafeh. We also paskin about say that anosei matana is ba'ayin yafeh. Everyone agrees with that. You give a gift. Giving a gift, ultimately, again, is always considered to be ba'ayin yafeh. And therefore, when you give a gift, the assumption is everything is included in that gift, unless, of course, you specifically exclude. Now, as much as we say mocher ba'ayin yafeh, as much as we say that, there are always certain carve-outs. What are the carve-outs? In other words, I say that's our Mishnah. Even if you hold mocher ba'ayin yafeh, that only includes items that are really considered to be part of the field and don't have an identity on their own. What won't it include? So again, I will say it will not include the bar, the shovach, the gat, the doch, all of these things which have their own identity. Included in that are the charuv and the shikma. Right, the pruned carob tree the grafted carob tree and the pruned sycamore tree, these are items that have their own identity. So because of that, even if you hold, it's not a stira, even if you're holding mocher ba'ayin yafeh mocher, anything with its own unique identity is automatically not included in the sale. The two exceptions to that are going to be matana and hektish. Right, matana and hektish, ultimately, again, everyone is, halacha l'maisa, we paskin, both of those things happen ba'ayin yafa as well, and will be much more inclusive than just the regular sale. That's the halacha l'maisa. Take it, everybody say, let's finish up the parak. Here we go. Let's go. Rav Huna. Charuv amurkov, it's not shigma. Torah's inalav or Torah's karkalav. So Rav Huna says, a grafted carob tree and a pruned sycamore tree have the status both of a tree and of karka. How so? Torah's ilan alav de'echad da'akdish ozav shnei lanos v'hai yesh lo karka. So we'll say, on one hand, it has the status of a tree. How does it have the status of a tree? Let's say I will say I'm going ahead and selling, or for that matter, being makdish, 2 trees plus a charuv, right? Plus a grafted carob. So we'll say, so that charuv or that shikma becomes tree number 3. Once you have tree number 3, I will say, what does that do? That triggers, as we saw before, what happens once there's 3 trees? You get the karka, you get the trees in between. So therefore, again, in certain respects, the charuv and the shikma is treated like a tree. On the other hand, Torah's karka alov, the lo mizdabin agavara. On the other hand, it's also treated like karka. How is it treated like karka? Then I will say, if you sell karka, the charav and the shikma are not automatically included, right? Why? Because again, they don't have the status of trees. They almost have their own chashuv status, like independent karka. Incredible. Ravuna says, Omer sheish sasayim, Taras Omer alav v'Taras gadish alav. So also Ravuna says this also. I will say if you have an Omer. Now Omer literally means a sheaf. But we're going to see if you have a very, very, very large sheaf of grain. Now, I will say so much that again, this has sasayim. This has 2 sa'ah of grain packed into this sheaf. This is big. So on one hand, the Gemara says it has the status of a sheaf, and then it also has the status of a gadish. Now, I will say gadish. Good English word for gadish is a stack. Right? So you have a sheaf and you have a stack of grain. So if you have a sheaf that has 2 sa'ah, that's a big sheaf that has the status of a sheaf and the status of a stack. How so? Torah's Omer alav. So on one hand it has the status of a sheaf. That's what? The Shnei Omrim Shechacha. What's the mirror? Normally, what's the halach of shechacha? If you're harvesting your field and you leave behind 2 sheaves, you have to leave it behind. You have to leave it behind for the poor. What happens if you leave behind 2 sheaves and this big sheaf? Then that becomes like number 3, and therefore again it's no longer shechacha. You can take everything back with you. On the other hand, Torah's Kaddish is considered to be a Kaddish Tichsiv. This nan Omer sheyish bo sasayim, right? Omer sheyish bo sasayim. If you have this sheaf that has 2 sa'ah, shechacha in shechacha. If you forget that sheaf in the field, that's not called shechacha. That's so big that it's not called shechacha. Amar Rab Arachana Amar Rav. So if Rabbi has this dual identity, Rabbi say, what's the tremendous Moshe Haskellness? Tremendous Moshe Haskellness is that things in this world could possess multiple identities, right? So if the charav and the shikma, right, could possess the identity of the eights and of karka, and if this big sheaf could sometimes be a sheaf and sometimes be a stack. So alachas kama v'kama. If these things could have dual identities, alachas kama v'kama, I could have multiple identities as well. Meaning what? So maybe I've been a certain kind of person my whole life, right? Or maybe I've been a certain kind of person this whole week or this whole month, and I'm not happy with that identity. I want to become someone else. Sometimes we think that the people we have been are the people we must continue to be. That we learn from the charav and the shikma, we learn from the very large sheep. That's not true. You could change your identity. You could become someone different. If the sheep could do it, I can do it. If the sycamore could do it, I can do it. If I want to become someone different and change my identity, that ability is absolutely within my power. Let's finish up the parak. Amar Rab Arachan Areish Lagish. Charav Hamurka V'Stana Shikma. Baruch Machlokes Rai Menachem Bar Yossi V'Rabbanan. So also when it comes to the grafted carrot and the pruned sycamore, we have come to the Machlokes Rai Menachem Bar Yossi and the Rabbanan. So both says we're going to see ultimately again the shaila is, are these trees included in the ilan, in the sada or not? So this is the machlokes. The Rashbam says over here, charav amorka v'stana shikma im kadosh bichlal sada im lav. Right? Are they included in the consecration of the field or not? This is the machlokes Rabbi Nachman Bar Yossi in the Rabbanan. I will say top of Ayin Gimel. V'leo machlokes Rabbi Shimon Rabbanan. Why do you have to introduce new people over here? Why not say it's the same machlokes Rabbi Shimon Rabbanan, which it is? To which the Gemara says, Hakamash Malon, Rabbi Nachman Bar Yossi Rabbi Shimon Svirle. Okay, it's going to teach us that Rabbi Nachman Bar Yossi holds like Rabbi Shimon ultimately again, and not like the Rabbanan. So just trying to align 2 new opinions with 2 previously stated opinions. Rabbi Osai, Hadron Allah, Chamos Mochar Sabayis, Shkoyach, Mazel Tov. New parak tomorrow, Rabbi Osai.